Hi everyone, I'm Michael Manrique and I'm one of the Habit Guys. We teach realtors prospecting habits so they finally become top producing agents. And welcome to the Realtor Habits Podcast, where agents don't need more stuff, they need better habits. Before we get into today's episode, I want to let you know this episode is brought to you by our free Facebook group. That's right, we all want to prospect consistently and be more organized. Well, to do that, we need to think, do, and act like a top producer. Watch us prospect live and teach you every week for free how to get more listings, expires listings, FSBOs listings, how to connect with your sphere, learn how to not sound salesy, but instead make friends. Well, all you have to do is visit us at www.habitguys.com/Facebook. Again, that's habitguys.com/Facebook and learn all the skills top producers use in their day-to-day business. If you know anyone that can gain value from this podcast, please do us the favor and share it with them. We're here to help as many realtors as possible, and we appreciate your help to do so. All right, let's get into today's episode. Today's episode is called The Most Efficient and Effective Way to Prospect. A common question that is asked is, what should I be doing and why should I be doing that, right? And at the end of the day, everyone wants an outcome, a result. That result in real estate is deals, transactions, right? So it's important to understand where our time, energy, and effort should be tied to, because ideally, that is going to reap our outcomes, our rewards, the results that we're after, closing the deals. So with this in mind, it's really important to understand really what is real estate success and what do we have to do to drive that success. Now, one of the beautiful things about real estate is that there's really one activity above everything else that you can say with absolute certainty that leads to a real estate agent success. And what do you think that is? That's right, it's the P word, prospecting, right? Prospecting allows us to connect with people. Connecting with people allows us to sit down with them, do buyers and listing consultations, and it allows us to have a contract. And once we have a contract, we could then get that transaction, right? So that is the process. It starts with connecting. But what is the most efficient and effective way to connect, i.e. prospect? That's what I want to talk about today. So the way I like to think about real estate success is I like to think about it like a popularity contest. Now think about the last time maybe you were part of a popularity contest. For most of us, it was probably high school, right? Homecoming king and queen, right? Something like that. And when we think about the popularity contest, what was it about the individual that we voted for? Or the person that won? Maybe you didn't vote, but you saw them and you're like, oh, that makes sense, right? Well, for a lot of us, maybe we heard stories about the person or we knew about the person, right? And one of the things, the key characteristics is that that person generally was, honest with themselves and others. They probably got involved or cared about people in a way that was more than what you were doing, or maybe other people that you would consider to be the most popular. Maybe they were more positive and they probably connected with a lot of people. And these are the same criteria that you should be leveraging as a real estate agent. And this is really important because what we want to establish is we as real estate agents want to be top of mind when a prospect has a real estate question about buying or selling. And for that to happen, we need to be popular in their mind. So what's really important is creating a process or understanding what's the most efficient way for us to be top of mind, right? When they need real estate help, when your prospect, your contacts, the people you know need real estate help, and even more so, the people that they know, right? One of the most effective ways of growing every real estate agent's business is through referrals. And what that means is that the person that knows you is connecting with someone else and a real estate question appears or a situation appears, and the person that has confidence in you feels so good about the quality of work that you provide, you are so popular, right, that they will then recommend your service to them and get you in contact with. So it's important to understand that there's two efforts that we're focusing on here. One is what we are doing, and then the impact of what we do essentially is vibrating, right? Is being sent out through the people that you've contacted with. So with this being said, now we understand why it's so important, right? So now let's understand how we determine how to win this popularity contest. So let's nail this down and just be honest. So statistically, the National Association of Realtors months ago stipulated that on average, they speculated that every adult knows at least 7 real estate agents. So the popularity contest on average, based on that, is we want to be number 1 of 7 that most adults know are in real estate. So what's the best way? What is the most efficient and effective way to do so? So let's first understand human behavior and human psychology. So the way that we connect with people is by building trust. The most effective way to build trust with people is to meet them in person. When you meet people in person, not only do you speak to them, but you get to see their mannerisms. You get to understand them and understand the tone of how they're speaking, their smirks on their face. And what that does is it allows a greater connection to be made versus the other methods that we're going to be talking about. So the primary methods that we're going to be focusing on are 5 primary methods of connecting, right? And their effectiveness. So the most effective way for us to build trust and connect with other human beings is certainly face to face, in person, right? Now, we've talked about this throughout history, right? Socially, the way that we come together, we build tribes, we've grown, we've evolved, right? We've built communities is through face-to-face communication, and that's why it's the most effective way to build trust and connect. Now, the second most effective way to build trust is to call, right? It's important to note that calling and meeting face-to-face, what that does is it guarantees that the communication will be had that's going back and forth at the same moment in time. This is going to be different from text messaging, which is the third way of prospecting, emailing, and direct mail. When we implement those other methods of prospecting, right, it's important to note that there's no actual connection being made, right? The connection requires both of us to be present at one time, and being face to face allows that to happen, and so does being on the phone with someone, and that's why it's the second most effective way. We're able to hear them, speak to them, respond to them, have correspondence, and that's how we maintain. That's the second most effective way to maintain and build trust in a relationship. Now, the third most effective way is text messaging. As you probably know, text messaging is probably one of the most effective ways to get people's attention, but there are going to be times when we don't get their attention. So that's why it's the third most effective way. The next most effective way would be direct mail. And then the last is email. Now, of course, for the sake of prospecting, we could include ads, but we don't want to do that because that's more of an automated process. So let's stick with the things that really are under most of our control, if we can say that. So now we understand the effectiveness levels to connect with people. Again, connection allows us to then discover an opportunity for intent to buy or sell. Once we identify intent to buy or sell, then we can move for the appointment. The appointment then allows there to be a presentation of our services, right? A buyer's consultation or a listing consultation, which then allows there to be a contract and then allows there to be a deal. So again, we now understand the 5 most effective ways to connect and how it leads to the outcome we want. Okay? But this podcast wasn't about what's the most effective way. It's about what's the most efficient and effective way. Now, this is really important because at the end of the day, we are all under the same limits of time. We all have 24 hours in a day, and we can only maximize that time. And this is where efficiency is really important to get the most out of our time, energy, and effort. So the problem with the most effective way to connect, which is face-to-face, is that the methods that are required to do so are too resource dependent, meaning that you have to spend a lot of time, energy, and effort to prepare, then to do, and then to record. So a prime example might be door knocking or going to an event. So you have to get dressed, you might have to drive somewhere, you might have to walk around, you might have to then take that information and then apply it to another system that's going to then allow you to follow up with them on a consistent basis, right? And not only that, but and then we also are dealing with the elements of our environment, right? There are other factors that are impacting the resources, the amount of energy, and also just the reality of the amount of people we would connect with is going to be much smaller than the next most efficient way. So now you could see, while it is the most effective way to prospect, right? Meeting people in person, door knocking, going to events or parties, it's certainly not the most efficient. The most efficient is the second most effective way to prospect, which is making calls, right? So remember, I stipulated that the call and meeting in person allows the correspondence or the connection of rapport to take place, right? So in that sense, it's equal to making sure that we are able to see eye to eye or connect with each other at the same speed. It guarantees that when we're speaking to someone on the phone, we have their attention. Furthermore, the reason why calls are the second most effective and the most efficient way to prospect is because you could literally make calls as soon as you wake up in your PJs, from your bed, with bad breath, and no one would know otherwise. Not only that, but because of other technologies like dialers, you can make a vast amount of calls, depending on the amount or your organization and the mechanism. You can make anywhere from 60 calls to about 200 calls in an hour. Now, of course, conversations are going to dictate the amount of time that you're actually making calls, but that's the whole point of this process, is to have conversations which lead to connections, again, which leads to identifying buyers and selling intent, which then leads to an appointment, which then leads to a contract and leads to a transaction. So with this in mind, this is why it's what's the most effective and most efficient out of the 5 different ways that we can prospect and connect with people. The most effective and efficient is making calls, and it's not even close. So at the end of the day, what we want to do is make sure that we have a system that allows us to make the most amount of calls in the most effective way possible. Now, if you're interested in understanding more on how to do this, how to set this up, and more importantly, how to build the habit so you do this day in and day out and prospect consistently, go to www.habitguys.com/call. Again, that's habitguys.com/call. We have a limited amount of coaching seats available, but this is a free consultation where you decide or we decide actually, if we're an actual fit. So again, go to habitguys.com/call. So there you have it. So now you understand the most efficient way to prospect and the most effective way, that combination, efficient and effective, is making calls. Now it falls upon you to make sure to have a system to get you there. All right. So in closing, here is the missing piece to your business. It's accepting that when you know better, you do not necessarily do better. You do better when you change your habits. Let us help.